Hello, I'm Roxanne Perez, and today I'm going to present my final project in our class, Early Acquisition of Bilingualism. My paper is titled, Examining Additional Language Acquisition of Children in Multicultural and Multilingual Learning Environments. I will present my introduction, the case study of the focused children in my project, my conclusion, and I will show you my bibliography. 4 parents were used in this case study in order to examine the strategies used by each set of parents to raise their child bilingually, and in one case multilingually, as well as identify the stages of language acquisition and the cognitive development in each of these early language learners. The overall goal of the study was to examine students in bilingual environments, both at home and at school, and compare and contrast the way that these children learn languages. The 4 focused children in this project, their ages range from 3 years old to 9 years old, and they're all from the same IB bilingual school. 2 are in preschool and 2 are in 3rd grade of primary. It is important to mention that the parents selected were chosen with a goal. 2 sets are Spanish bilinguals, where one parent has a strong proficiency in English, they're L2, and the other 2 sets of parents, there's at least one adult who is a native English speaker married to a Spanish L1 speaker. Out of these 4 sets of parents, 3 are in the world of education. 1 is a university English literature professor, 2 are primary school English teachers, and 1 is a high school English teacher. The first child to be researched is Inez, age 9 and 2 months. She's in 3rd grade. She is considered an early simultaneous bilingual as she has been exposed to both English and Spanish since birth. Her parents have followed since birth a one-parent, one-language strategy. Her father uses his L2 English to communicate with his daughter, and the mother uses their L1 to communicate in Spanish. And their strategies are communicative approach, playing lots of games, reading, singing. And we can say that Inez is a compound bilingual. She has 1 semantic system and 2 linguistic codes. Now, her parents and her teachers who I interviewed have said that they find that Inez does code switching based on her moods. So she's a very emotional child, very sociable, and when it comes to expressing her emotions, she switches to her L1 Spanish. But we can say that she speaks English like a native, fluently, and in both languages she has rich vocabulary. Alvaro, age 9 and 2 months, is another classmate of Inez, has the same exact profile. His parents use one language, one strategy. His mother speaks in English using her L2 to communicate with both children, whereas the father uses his L1. Now, Alvaro is a compound bilingual. He has 1 semantic system and 2 linguistic codes. As I was interviewing his parents and his teachers, they both expressed that reading is not Alvaro's favorite pastime, and this shows with his level of writing skills, which both parents and educators express this as an area that Alvaro needs to work on, writing and reading. However, orally, he speaks in both language with rich vocabulary, rich grammatical structures, and it's interesting to see that he has a great ear for different accents, and he can imitate the different accents that are in his learning environment. Frida, age 5 and 2 months, is in her last year in preschool, in kindergarten. She is an example of having a sequential acquisition, that is where 3 languages are lexically mixed into an eventual structural differentiation between the languages. We can say that she's at stage 2 of this acquisition. She's creating structure and meaning in her L3. Her parents claim that they have a one-parent, one-language strategy, However, it's a little bit complicated. Her father, who is Spanish Catalan, uses his L1 Catalan, he's also L1 in Spanish, to communicate with his daughter at home. The mother uses her L1, which is English. She's a native English speaker and a high school teacher. And it's interesting that both parents, mother and father, as the father does not speak English, they communicate amongst themselves in Spanish. So it is safe to assume that during dinner time, Frida is around 3 different languages, which is not really following the one parent, one language strategy completely. We can say that she's a coordinate bilingual, and this refers to someone whose languages are learned in distinctly separate contexts. She has 2 semantic systems and 3 linguistic codes. The next focus child is Liam, age 4 and 3 months. He's an example of early simultaneous bilingual, being exposed to both English and Spanish since birth. Now, his parents, they have a role where they mix the languages. His mother's Puerto Rican and his father is Irish and Spanish. So they grew up with both L1 being Spanish and English, and they use this to communicate with their son. Now, they say that they speak naturally and organically, so they don't have a real designated time where they use one language over another. However, it still is apparent that Liam can use both languages easily. He's a compound bilingual. He has 1 semantic system and 2 linguistic codes. It's important to note that in the summer times, he spends a month in Puerto Rico, where he is immersed in Spanish language with his grandmother, who uses Spanish as her L1. And in Madrid, he spends time with his paternal grandmother, who takes care of him, and she uses her L1 English as she is Irish. Now, both parents in this family are primary English teachers, and they, just like all the other families, have said that they work with languages in a fun, ludic manner, and they sing lots of songs, play lots of games. And as Liam is only 4 years old, he's not yet reading, they work a lot in English with Jolly Phonics. Now, the findings in these case studies varied from child to child, family to family. It was important to see that those who have a learning system where there's one parent, one language, showed a higher proficiency, and they can effectively communicate in both languages. But we can also argue that these 2 cases are children who are 9 years old, so they're in a different language level than the other 2 case studies who are in preschool. It's also interesting to see that in the case of Frida, who is learning 3 languages, there have been signs where she associates her L3 Catalan as being only a private home language with her father, and her parents respect that and understand that it's a process. And eventually she may come out of her shell and want to be able to practice Catalan in other spaces outside of her home. Now, as I was doing this research, what came into my mind that I would like to further explore is the connection between personality and emotional intelligence of these young language learners. Now, as an educator living in Spain for the past 12 years, I've had the opportunity of witnessing bilingual education movements in Madrid. I've been working in different education levels, preschool, primary school, secondary school, and I've also been collaborating with adult educators, teaching them English so they can go on and be English teachers. Now, every year I see that Spain is becoming more and more of a globalized, multicultural, multilingual countries where communities are constantly shifting and individuals are moving in and out of them. So it's interesting to see this evolution of early language learners in Spain who are attending bilingual school, and they're interacting with this multicultural, multilingual community. I've finished this presentation with a quote from Stefan Krashen, who once said, "We do not acquire language by producing it, only by understanding it." I would like to share my bibliography with you. my online references. And I would like to thank you for your time and your attention.